everybody. Let me have a sip of coffee. So, welcome to Transgressive Music, and this time I thought I would take you to Japan to have a little look at an incredible artist and a lesser known yet fascinating song. And I'm talking about Akiko Yano and her 1977 album Irohani-Konpeitou, which is a album title that I cannot really properly translate for you, and I should be so lucky that someone who speaks fluently Japanese or is even from Japan would probably give a little help here in the comment section. What I do know is that Irohani-Konpeitou is basically a children's rhyme, kind of like Humpty Dumpty or something like that. So it's obviously a bit of a tongue-in-a-cheek album title, almost like a little joke. But this kind of a children's rhyme or children's song is being actually recorded on this album in a kind of rock pop style. Now I want to have a look at the third track on this album, which is called Machikutabirete. And it's a kind of wonderful atmospheric song that I believe was stylistically quite ahead of its time. It actually sounds more like something you would expect in the 90s, but this is a step back into 1977, and let's have a listen. Now, this is one of those albums where one track is kind of floating and morphing into another, or being set up with kind of a crossfade. So we will hear a few bars, a few tones from the previous song, I guess, because that's how it is imprinted on the album. Wait a second. So, all right, let's go. Alright. You know, these tracks on this album, they are kind of very tight put together. Yeah, what a wonderful and ambitious arrangement of a rather little song, right? It begins very inconspicuous actually, and then it turns out into this kind of a big power ballad. So that's quite wonderful. The lineup on this song is quite hilarious. You have the legendary Haruomi Hosono on bass. Hideki Matsutake is setting up all the kind of computer and synthesizer programming. I mean, this is 1977, so this is still the era when those synthesizer modules were these giant cupboards where you needed a ladder to climb to the upper settings. The wonderful surf rock virtuoso Shigeru Suzuki is playing guitar here. And so Akiko Yano at this point was already pretty well connected to this whole kind of Yellow Magic Orchestra bunch. I mean, she joined the band during their live performances. And also great drumming by Tatsuo Hayashi here. Kind of very great feel, very inventive. Because it's such a calm song, but it has at the same time it delivers kind of this very majestic, almost dramatic demeanor. So this is certainly a very kind of original production and quite a fascinating track. But at the same time, when I listen to it, it always makes me think that this is the kind of song you would expect in the 90s maybe. And here it felt quite ahead of its time, and a great example of the inventiveness that was so typical for Akiko Yano. Sometimes when people mention Akiko Yano, they call her the Japanese Kate Bush, which I always felt is probably unfair for a whole bunch of reasons. One of them being that Akiko Yano actually was earlier on the scene than Kate Bush by 2 or 3 years basically, and she certainly was not or is not such a hyper talented accomplished vocalist compared with Kate Bush, but she also has a very different approach towards music production in general, I guess, because while in the mid-80s, Kate Bush basically became this world-famous recluse, Akiko Yano rose to fame as one of Japanese major music producers, and the amount of projects and albums she has to her name is countless. She was married to Ryuichi Sakamoto for many years, of course. They both appeared on each other albums quite a lot. So to some extent, this was an example of a rather straight and almost conventional track by Akiko Yano. Almost every of her albums also has a whole range of somewhat more experimental and kind of left fieldish and more kind of daring songs. So her albums are usually very interesting and are never particularly repetitive. So I hope you've enjoyed this little presentation from Akiko Yano's 1977 album Irohani-Konpeitou. And if you speak Japanese, please let me know in the comment section what Machikutabirete means, because I really like to know. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and have a nice day, and see you next time.